Again, I appreciate your patience as we get things rolling here, but I do want to welcome you this evening to the MRE walkthrough. This is the 5th walkthrough that we've done of our facilities. We have one left, and that would be 2 weeks from now at Smith Road. So next week, because of spring break, we do have a week off, and then we're going to come back, and on the following Tuesday, we'll do the Smith Road walkthrough. So I do thank you for attending, especially in light of Sunday it was 75, and then today it's 37. So only in Michigan, 2 inches of snow.
Hey, at least we broke the record, right?
Yeah, we broke the record. I want to introduce myself. I'm Mark Finance. I'm the school superintendent. This is Paul Terrio. Paul works for Plant Moran Cressa. In Paul's company, and he'll explain in detail what Plant does, but they're the ones that completed the facility walkthrough, and that's why we're here this evening. We're here to see, what are the issues that Plant Moran saw when they did this walkthrough. We also have a couple other people in the audience. We have Sandy Crane. She is our media person for the school district. We have a couple board members. Ron Cook. Ron, raise your hand. Ron is here, and we have Lisa McKay. Lisa is here. I have our CFO in the back, Sharon, and we have Alex, okay, and we have Miss Salzweiger. Raise your hand. She's in the back. She's been to many of these. We have Mr. Hardy, Mike in the back, and I think that's pretty much everybody. So again, I thank you. I'll talk a little bit about the format, and then we'll turn it over. We have a PowerPoint presentation about the entire bond. And the first couple walkthroughs for the people that were here, we were going through that. And what we found out is the people coming through the tour is they're like, Mark, come on, we've already seen this part, so move on to the tour. So that's what we're going to do. However, this is on our website. So you can go through and look at it, and you can get information. But many people, as they said, the feedback we're getting is they want to get to the tours, they want to see the facility. However, what we have been doing is afterwards, just coming back here in a casual kind of format, discussing if there's questions that you have, that you'd like to ask Paul or I. If we can't get the answers to you, we will try to get the answers to you. So again, I do welcome you. So the format is we're going to do a quick tour, and then for those that would like to stay Q&A afterwards, we can do that. This building, of all of the buildings, is the newest building. It's approximately 13 years old. Was built, I believe, in 2001. Alex back here, stand up, Alex. Why don't you come on up here? Alex is our new principal of this facility, and we're happy to have Alex aboard. He's done a great job. How many months have you been here?
About 5 months.
About 5 months. So, kind of new guy on the block, and he's going to do the tour with us. We have grades K through, just give it the K through 5, and about how many kids?
About 700, or between 690 and 700 at all times.
Okay, grades?
K5.
K5, so we do have the real little ones and the big ones. And do we have any other programs here for any of the preschool, any of the
Not at this
ISD?
Yeah, because of the fact that our enrollment's so high, we don't have the space.
Okay.
So we do house a lot of the community ed programs at night, and we also have latchkey before and after school.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. And when we get into the tour, then you'll kind of help us out a little bit as well. Yeah? Okay, so kind of an overview. I believe slated when they did the first facility walkthrough, the repairs in this building were about $1.3 million, and that number has been adjusted a little bit. This was estimated from the facility study. On our webpage, there's a facility study, the first document that you can click on, that's an overview of all of the work that Plant Moran saw. And then the second document is a document, and this is right under the bond tab, that is called the preliminary qualification application. Before you do a bond project, it has to be approved by Lansing. And the preliminary qualification application is the document that Lansing approved. So when they first did the walkthrough, we were at about 1.3, and then as you can see, the estimated cost of the repairs went down to about $1 million. There were some adjustments from the original to the what was sent in the PQ application. And these are the things that we're going to talk about. And oops, I went too far. There we go. These are the issues that Paul's going to explain. He can give an overview of Plant Ran and then maybe talk about these, and then we're going to go see these issues. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
Great. As Mark mentioned, I'm Paul Terrio with Plant Moran Cressa. Just a little bit about our firm. You probably have heard of Plant Moran. We actually have an office in Toledo and all over the Midwest, but we're a corporate service and accounting firm. We're actually the 13th largest such firm in the United States. We're mostly known as accountants, but the group that I belong to is about 50 individuals, architects, engineers, attorneys, CPAs. We help people with their real estate needs, and then we help manage capital projects for the middle market. So if you think of municipalities, school districts, we do some community college work, like things like that, industrial office work as well, but I would say about a third of our revenue is just managing K-12 projects. So whether it's planning a bond issue, managing a sinking fund, doing an assessment like we did for you folks, or just doing consulting work, that's kind of our bread and butter. So we were engaged last fall by the district to come through, tour all your facilities, and try to put an assessment together to help figure out how could we best use the sinking fund dollars going forward, and should we go out for a renewal, and kind of what were some of the needs of the district. So we actually met with a lot of different people. We met with all the building principals and toured each building. And when I say we toured the building, I mean we went on roofs, we went in boiler rooms, we went into closets, we looked around everywhere trying to see what needed to be done. We, as I mentioned, met and talked with a lot of different people, athletic directors, the food service director, technology director. We met with the board members one-on-one. We actually did a survey of all the parents and staff to find out, what are some of the hot button issues. We heard a lot of common themes, as you might imagine, about traffic flows on site with pickup and drop off, a lot of security concerns, a lot of environmental issues as far as the heating and cooling systems, lighting systems. So we took all that information and compiled it into a report and basically came up with a 10-year projection of what the district would need to do over the next 10 years to keep your facilities running efficiently and the learning environments for the children being the way that they should be. So that's kind of where these numbers came from. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of construction, so we have a very good handle on costs as far as what it would cost to replace windows or mechanical systems or lighting controls and things like that. This building, obviously being the newest one, is in pretty good shape. As Mark mentioned, it's about 13 or 14 years old. So we even looked at, even though it's new, we still looked at the roof, for instance. It's a shingle roof for the most part. It's 13 years old. Well, okay, how long is the warranty good for on the shingles? And then what can you typically expect out of a shingle roof as far as duration of that system? So these are some of the highlights that we came across. We're going to walk through and look at some of these things. Obviously, some of the older buildings, walking through, we were looking at a lot more deficiencies as far as the mechanical and electrical systems. As I mentioned, this building's in pretty good shape, but I did want to go walk by the main entrance and talk about how we think that should be reconfigured for security. And as part of that, we're looking at a lot of different systems, a surveillance system in the building, access control to be expanded so the teachers can swipe in and out with Prox cards so the doors aren't left open or propped open. We're looking at a new security system as well, and a mass notification system, so either in the unlikely event that it hopefully never happens, that there is an emergency in the office, somebody can hit a button and let the building know that, hey, there's an issue here, it needs to be addressed, stay in your classrooms, etc. So the main entrance I mentioned, the parking lot, obviously if you've been here in the mornings or the afternoons, you know that traffic can back up onto the road at sometimes. This building is good, the fact that it has the buses separate from the parent drop-off. But I think when this building was designed, not quite as many parents dropped their kids off at school as they do nowadays, and we've seen that pretty consistently among all our clients. So what we're looking at doing is expanding that drive that people use to drop off. So we're going to try to have a little bit more capacity in there so the cars can stack up on the property and not back up into the road. That's a pretty big thing there. And then some of these other items, the kindergarten rooms, the lockers, temperature and electrical upgrades, we can kind of walk through at the building, I think, and touch base on some of that. So I guess I'm ready to go if you guys are.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll head down the hallway to
the
front.
To the main entrance?
Yep, we'll go to the main entrance first. So again, we'll be coming back here when we're done. They are going to film, so if you do have a question as we go through or something they may, you know, kind of get you closer to the equipment. So, but let's roll. A big portion of it, you know, MRE is a small piece of it because of the newness of the building. But you can see the high school area, the auditorium, the junior high, the new elementary school, the SRE additions, and we're going to visit SRE 2 Tuesdays from now, and then you can see the work that's being done, the buses, transportation, administration building. We house 2 academic programs over there. So, and the MRE renovation is a small piece of this, but we wanted to put this up as a visual, and we'll have this on the website so that you can visit it, and so that, you know, if you have questions or discussions. We also have Ask BPS webpage that has a lot of questions. I think it's 6 pages long, and what we've been doing, Sandy's been keeping track of the questions, and we're doing the best that we can to get the information out and answer the questions and put them on the website. So she'll be doing very similar today. If you do have questions, then if you don't mind, because if you have a question, someone else probably does. So I would ask that, you know, that you look at that. Another big piece that's kind of changed in all of this from when we started is tomorrow night, on Thursday night, the Board of Education is going to be discussing some options with the facilities that we have. Currently, we house the seniors in our out in a facility out in Samaria, and the facility is kind of a tri-level thing, but the one level is quite big, and it's functionable, but in the other areas, it's really starting to deteriorate. It actually has a Michigan basement, is the term that I used. And so we are looking at some plans. The Board of Education, Ron, and the rest of the board members will be discussing on Thursday to repurpose some of the, if the bond does pass, to repurpose some of the facilities to possibly do something with our seniors. The vision for that property, Pam Ripka, the director, wants to be able to offer to our community a elderly daycare, and so it would be, I'm not an expert certainly in this area, but that's the vision. Unfortunately, where she is right now, the facility will not house that. If we're going to repurpose some of our properties, then and use that, maybe we could get an area that has what she would need. You need showers, you need areas for fitness, you obviously need a kitchen. They do their Meals on Wheels. So Larry is here. Larry's been working on that project with us, and I appreciate Larry's work in that area. So we're trying to look at this as a whole package and how we can not just benefit certainly our students, which is what we're here for, the teaching and the learning and the students in Bedford, but possibly looking at some offshoots as well. And the board will be discussing that as we move forward. So with that,
could I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of to overview a little bit. You can see from walking through this building that it is still in pretty good shape. It's only 13 years old, as we mentioned. But you can see that the codes and the way that the building is used has changed a lot, from, you know, the electrical codes, from the drop-off in the front, from the way the kindergarten went from half day to a full day. And that's just over the last 13 years. And if you think about some of the other buildings in the district that are 40 years old, 50 years old, 55 years old, and you think about how education has changed over that period of time, it kind of gives you a good idea of why now is the right time for the district to pursue a bond proposal. There just really are a lot of inadequacies in the other buildings. And again, I encourage you to go take a tour of some of the older facilities, you know, whether it's mechanical and electrical systems, whether it's egress out of classrooms, you know, just student-centered learning environments, whether it's whiteboards and technology and things like that. Things have changed a lot. You know, it's time really for us to reinvest in the district so we can keep everything strong, keep the community strong, and keep those test scores going up and up.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. It's interesting that the state ranks all of the schools top to bottom, and this building is one of the top academic buildings in the state. So one of the reasons why I came here was because of the academic excellence, as well as Bedford is known throughout. Outside of Bedford, it's known throughout for its co-curricular programs. And so it really makes it a really nice place. I try to get out and about. I'm a little ADD, so I've gotten to know a lot of the students, especially at the middle school and the high school. And, you know, there's some great kids here, and that's a reflection of the parents, a reflection of the community. I met with some seniors today, and we spoke at length about that. And so this really is a very unique place, and it's a very nice place. So I'm glad I landed here. But I know there are some questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand so we can get it on the system. And if that will open it. Now, I might not be able to answer everything, or Paul, but certainly if we can't get the answer, we'll take your name and number and get it to you. So if we would like to open it, we have a question right here in front. You don't? There we go.
My name's Ken Gagne, and I'm wondering why we're not looking at maybe selling a couple of the schools. Get the community to have a trade school for the kids that can't afford to go to college or don't want to go to college. I understand there's been some money spent on Temperance Road. I've talked to a couple people that think the schools, rather than spend $1.25 million to tear them down, sell them. Get that money to come back to us. And the other question I've got is, why do we have so much property?
So much what, I'm sorry?
So much property. I understand that the school system has 305 acres of land. I may be wrong because I got it secondhand, but I understand there's a big wood lot that runs behind the bus garage.
I think one time this district owned that whole.
Let's sell that wood lot and get the money coming back in taxes.
Okay, I'll try to tackle and those are great questions, I do appreciate it. We'll try to tackle the first one first with the other facilities, and I know that people have asked this question. One of the things that, for example, at Temperance Road, we had a water main break, and so that's, I think, what you're talking about. We had to spend about $15,000 to repair that water main break because we've got to keep the buildings heated and keep them up. When I talked about repurposing a facility, that's what I was talking about. Now, for example, Douglas Road, if we weren't going to repurpose that, we would want to bring it down. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of which we would have to heat it, right? You'd have to keep it up, and you'd have to insure it if it's a building. So that costs certainly the district money. There's another issue with, I don't know if you kind of caught, the state of Michigan was at one point thinking about, in Lansing, demanding that public schools, so your tax dollars and my tax dollars, if there was an empty classroom or an empty facility, that you had to, this was actually in law, give it to a charter, give it to a for-profit school. And so there is that issue. Now that didn't pass, thank goodness, and it's probably because a lot of us called, and you've maybe called. So there is that issue about that piece. Now the question about how much property, and we can get to the CTE programs as well, I'm going to have to look that one up because I'm not sure about exactly. That's a good question. So Sandy, can you write that down and make sure I get your name and number, and I will call you back to know that property.
But wouldn't you be allowed to sell that Douglas Road, and then you wouldn't have to heat it or anything? We've got one up here that's got all kinds of offices. It has a restaurant. That's an old schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And when Nora bought it, all he had to do was put a roof on it and a heating system.
Interesting. Do you know when they sold that? Well, I don't know.
It was before I came here,
Okay.
and I don't know how much money or anything like that. But it's been functioning. I've been here since '02, and it's been functioning.
Okay, very good.
So just to add to that, as Mark mentioned, we've done some studies for other clients before about if you look at the operational costs, even for a vacant building to heat it, pay the insurance, electricity, water main breaks, things like that, it works out that if you knock it down, it pretty much pays for itself in 3 to 4 years. Well, so the thought is right now, knock it down property at some point, right? I don't know when the board would choose to do that, but that's certainly
Money for the building.
potentially. But then, as Mark mentioned, you could have somebody like a charter school that comes in and buys it, starts a charter school in your backyard, and steals a certain percentage of your children. So the net effect of that would be negative as opposed to positive. So that's definitely something the board needs to talk through and think about. I don't think we've totally made a decision on that yet, but it's certainly something we've talked about.
One of the things that we could do, and we have 2 programs, and that's why all these questions are good. The 2 programs we have at Smith Road, we have a Spring Arbor who runs part of Smith, and we have a robotics. It's like awesome. So the best programs in the state. we need to find an area, a place for them. And so in the preliminary qualification application, we have about 430-some thousand to take down TRE, to take down DRE. What I have asked Paul and his folks to do is call the state. Once you get approval on that application, that's what the state's going to expect you to do. But I've asked Paul to call and have them revisit that issue. And you can't use bond dollars to do a non-K-12 program, but you could use bond dollars to maybe take down parts of the buildings and maybe repurpose. That's what I was talking about, reuse that. So we just would want to make sure that we're following all of the steps and all of the laws so that I don't want to end up with an orange jumpsuit on. So anyways, we want to make sure, and they do. The state comes through, and I can tell you this by experience. When we were all said and done with the project that we did, they come through and they audit those figures. They look at all of the stuff, every dime. They look at the bids. They look at everything to make sure that everything was done transparent. Everything was, public bids with the openings and the reading off, and all the dollars were spent, all the change orders, and all of that kind of stuff. So your other question, though, about CTE programs, we do. Actually, Mickey's program and this program is part of the CTE classes that we offer at the high school. And so, they do the woods, they do the metals, they do those types of things. The ISD really would like to, I'm new here, so apparently, but they built some time back, maybe Ron can help me, a center for CTE programs. And I think the vision is to pull kids to this center to train them in voting programs. And I'm with you. I mean, four-year college is not for every kid. I mean, I know the state passed new regulations. Every kid's got to have algebra. Every kid's got to have, well, and I know that that's not for everybody. And so even at Monroe, one of the projects we did is we created an alternative center, alternative education program that kids go to school there and they come out, they go to 2 years up in Genesee County. It's called Mott Community College, and they're walking out of there with jobs and nursing and all kinds of different programs. So we understand that. We do have a CTE program and we do try to cater, but maybe you can help me.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd like to underline that because we have a very active CTE program with, with all the way from food services and things like that to our wood shop metals and the radio and TV. So Bedford is one of two in the county that really do that already in many, many ways. I'm sure, if we had a center, there are other things they could expand into, but we're serving a lot of students in Bedford already, and they're leaving right out of those classes into jobs in schools like Bex Howard in Detroit. So yeah, we're pretty active there. And like I said, there are a number of teachers and quite a few classes in that regard.
But the one question I can't answer, so I'm going to need your name and number. I'm not sure what the square footage is of our facility. But that's something I think the board needs to look at when it's all said and done about the extra properties and what we'd like to do. It's interesting that of the buildings, and we've talked, and many of these folks have been in the tours already, many of you guys have been here, and I do appreciate that. It's interesting, though, if you look at Temperance Road, Temperance was built first, and when they built Temperance Road, it has the wood beams, but the wood beams are buried in the cement. They don't go out into the weather. Jackman and Douglas do. They go right out into the weather, and that's one of the issues for doing the elementaries, obviously, those beams. But Temperance Road, although there are some other major issues with that facility, at least the beams are buried into the cement and they don't go out in the weather. They're not drawing in moisture. So, could we move Spring Arbor there? Could we move, the robotics program that's in Smith Road there? Could we move the seniors to that area? There's a lot of those decisions that we would make, and we try to, the Board of Education has been, I know they're looking at these, they're thinking about it, they're on board, they've been reading the FAQs and trying to really get a sense of some of the issues. So that's why no question that's a great question. How much property do we own? And that goes with that. So right here.
Yeah, I'm Larry Thompson, I'm sort of liaison between the senior center and the Board of Education, and I just wanted to comment that if the seniors were to get a facility, that Bedford would not be paying to renovate that facility. The senior center has their own money. They're funded primarily from the federal government and state grants with the Council on Aging, and they have other available funds through grants. So if anything happened, if the seniors were to get a facility, it wouldn't cost anything more in tax dollars here in Bedford.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and I know that the senior, Pam Ripka is the senior director. She's working on writing grants and looking for dollars to grow that program. And that's good. I mean, those programs certainly are good, so I appreciate that, Larry. Yes?
I have a question, and I guess I have a problem with it, is last year, or 2 years ago, we had to close Smith Road because we didn't have enough students to fill the school. So, we close it. You rent it for $50,000 a month, I believe, to a year, a year. But now you're coming back to us and saying, oh no, we need Smith Road and we need the room for the kids. Where did all the kids come from that you shipped out of there that you didn't need over there because it was too big of a building for the amount of students? Now it's perfect for the kids to go back over there. Why?
Okay, great question. I'll explain that. I wasn't here 2 years ago. I've been here for approximately 6 months, but the building is not big enough. Part of the bond issue calls for renovating that and adding 4 classrooms to make it big enough. Okay? So the other piece of that, and this is why this is a great question, of the elementaries, other than this one, but of those elementary buildings, Smith is brick and mortar, metal girders, metal plate, and then roof. With a facility like that, you can do something with that. That building lends itself better to renovation than Douglas and Jackman. So the plan is we could build 2 new elementaries, but the thought process was that Smith Road, with some work, and it would take, about, I think there's
$7 million or so.
$7 million worth of renovation, which includes making it bigger, which is probably why they closed it. I wasn't here, but I'm sure that has something to do with it. That would make more sense, renovating that facility and using it versus building 2 new elementaries. So really, that's kind of the way that goes.
I'm having a hard time because we shipped the kids out of there.
Yeah, I understand that.
We don't need that building anymore.
Well, I think, and I wasn't here either, obviously, but I think it was...
That's where you're going to have the problem, is because the school board has got to learn to really communicate with the parents, and the parents have got to learn to communicate with that school board. But the real burden falls on the school board because they have to learn to listen to the parents. When you tell us that we don't have enough kids over there, it's too big of a building, we're going to close it. We shipped them out, and now you're coming back saying, no, we really need the building. We can add on to it, we can bring it up, and we're going to ship the kids back over there. You just don't take kids and ship them here and ship them there. You find a stable place for them, and Bedford has always been good. We've been here for 40-some years. But what we have a problem with is we're not a rich community. We have a beautiful area, we have nice homes, but we have people in this township losing their homes. When you're coming to us for the money you're talking, you're coming to a big chunk of money, and you haven't really submitted the plans to us. It's like you're saying, people, we need this. Give us the bond, we'll go do it, and then everything will be fine. That's like me hiring a contractor to come in and remodel my home, and he says, I need the money up front, pay me now, and you'll be happy with what I do. I want to see blueprints. I want to see exactly what you're planning to do, and I want to see where each dollar is going. And the little diagram up there gives a small chunk to Monroe School, which doesn't need a lot because this is a new school. Temperance Road, like you said, the roof goes into the blocks. It's not going to go anywhere. It's a stable building. The one that I don't see you really concentrating on, because I can't see it good, is Douglas Road. Douglas Road has been a thorn in Bedford's side for a number of years. It leaks. It's a school that needs to be torn down and rebuilt. And that may be part of your plans, but you're not telling us that. You're not showing us what you're doing. And as a grandparent, I'm looking at the tax dollars that I'm going to be spitting out because I don't have no more kids. But I'm willing to spit it out if it's going to the right areas. Where is the money going to take care of the buildings? Where's that money coming from?
I can answer that question. Okay. We got a lot in there, and maybe it would be a sit down afterwards with Paul and I, or maybe some other time that we could sit down. You bring up some very good points. On what we have done is on the website, we have put in, and I would invite you to go to the website, or we can even print off copies, hard copies. We've done that for folks. But in the preliminary qualification application, the state makes sure that every project has dollars assigned, and that's a formula that plant uses when they plan out these projects. So it is very detailed. I mean, it's very detailed. Now, we don't have drawings because
Right, that's what I want.
yeah, we haven't hired an architect. We haven't hired an architect because typically you wouldn't do that until after the bond passes, because architect services for them to come in and draw are expensive.
But excuse me, you spent the money for the other survey.
Yeah, it would have, for architect services, it would be
You know,
more.
right,
Yeah.
it would be.
And that's typically what they do. They walk through. Now, Plant does have an architect on board. I mean, it's not just Paul. There are many, there's many facets of their operation. The other piece, and it's interesting, I didn't mean to laugh, but I haven't heard Douglas Road described the way that you described it. So I thought that was...
Well, it is. It's
yeah.
in rough shape.
Yeah, and that's why...
And it could be bulldozed and you could sell the property as far as I'm
Actually, that's pretty much what the plan is, right?
Yeah, the plan is to do that, but the issue that you have is Smith Road, and what we determined, and Paul can speak to this, that it made more sense repurposing Smith Road, bringing that up to code, spending the dollars there, moving the Douglas students, and we're talking 2 years down the road, this doesn't happen, that overnight, then move Douglas there, and then taking down Smith Road. I don't know.
Yeah, so just to add to that, and Ron and Lisa know more about it than I do, but when the district decided to go from 4 schools to 3 elementary schools, it was really to save dollars, right? And what they wanted to figure out is what schools were big enough to house that many students. You heard Alex say that there's about 700 kids in this school. Smith Road simply is not big enough to house 700 students. And that's why it wasn't used. It's the newest building of the elementary schools, other than this one. It was built, I think, in 1970 or so. The other ones are built, 10 or 12 or 15 years earlier than that. And that building, as Mark mentioned, is all block. It's structural. It's got terrazzo corridor floors. The classrooms are much bigger. It's just a better building. It was built better. It was built more recently than Jackman and Douglas. And I think if it was big enough, it would have certainly stayed open. But now, with the bond proposal, what we're suggesting is, because it's got better bones, so to speak, why not put an addition on it, reopen it up, bring up the mechanical systems, the electrical systems in, new windows, bring it up to speed, and repurpose it, and then knock Douglas Road down, knock Jackman down, because they've certainly seen the end of their useful life, structurally and mechanically and electrically. So what we're trying to do, and we've went through a lot of different iterations. We didn't just walk in the district and say, hey, Mark, knock this building down, do this one, do that one. We went through 100 different ideas of how could we, move kids around, what buildings are going to cost what to renovate, do we sell buildings or do we knock them down and try to sell the property? I mean, we didn't just come up with this thing overnight. We spent months and months talking with as many people as we could, with the board, getting input, and trying to come up with the best plan for the district. And this is all that I do, is K through 12 construction. I'm working in a couple different districts right now. I've done probably over 100, 150 school renovation jobs in my career. And so when we walk into these buildings, we know what to look for. How structurally sound is it? what about the water lines coming in? What about the mechanical systems? And we tried to come up with the best plan for your district that would use the least amount of money possible, have the best end result for the students, for the staff, for the safety, for the community, because you can see we're obviously not just doing the classrooms, but we're looking at upgrading the stadium, the track, the auditorium, some other things like that. How can we come up with the best plan that gave you guys the best district that you could get for your dollar? And that's the plan we came up with. So, sure.
On Smith Road, you're planning on sticking as much money in Smith Road School as you're planning on paying to build a brand-new elementary school?
No. Nope.
You got the same percentages on the board up there.
My year.
Thank you.
I will take credit for that. It's been updated on the
So,
website.
yeah, the shape of the pie is right, but the number's wrong. So there's about $18 million at the new elementary school, so $18 million, and Smith Road is about 7, I believe.
Okay,
so
then.
it's more than double.
9.19%.
Yeah.
If you pull this one up, and I'm like, oh no.
And then
So
another,
Good catch on your part.
And actually, we talked about why not build two new elementaries, but we decided, Smith Road is so much more affordable to renovate. Why would we spend, $11 million extra that we didn't have to?
And Lisa had, go ahead, Lisa.
I just have I had a follow-up.
I'm not done yet.
Here, Lisa, come up and use this.
I got another question
Yeah,
too.
hold your question just a second. Please ask about.
I just wanted to finish answering, I guess, as a part of a follow-up to your question, is, so from a Smith Road perspective too, because I think I heard something a little different from the question you asked as well, which is, we switched kids around, we closed Smith because we didn't have didn't have enough kids, right? So as a parent who was 100,000% against Smith Road closing, because I had 3 kids in Smith Road at the time, I was a thorn in the board side during that whole entire process. So I am a board member now, mostly spurred on by the fact that if you can't influence from outside in, you can influence from, flip it, inside out. So one of the things that I would say to that is that Smith Road didn't close because, or isn't going to reopen because we are going to have more kids, right? The bond premise is not built on, sorry, I'm just talking to these guys. The bond premise is not built on build it and they will come. It's built on the fact that we want to have better facilities for our students who are coming in, and whether it's through technology, Wi-Fi capabilities, safe entries, good drop-offs for parents and buses and things like that. The bond itself was built on a 5%, over the next 5 years, it's built on a decrease in students, so we're actually banking on losing students. If we don't and we gain students, that's great, because each building will have some additional capacity built into the plan, so the state doesn't allow you to build a 50% capacity, but most of them, I think, are somewhere between 15 and 20% additional capacity. So if we did have a surge here, we would be able to accommodate more students. But I wanted to just follow up, because I know that, and I'll happily talk with you afterwards as well about the Smith Road situation. And believe it or not, my kids moved from Smith Road, and then they also were the first 6th graders into the junior high, and they survived. It wasn't the best thing. As a parent, I don't think I almost survived, but they survived, and they are, probably more hardened because of it. I don't know.
Because I knew we didn't have any more students.
Right, we don't.
Enrollment is going down, but yet you're saying we need it now.
Right.
We didn't need it then, but we need it now.
Right, it's
That's
just-
where the problem's coming in.
Right, it's just a flip-flop. It's get rid of Douglas, move them back, because a lot of the Smith Road kids went to Douglas Road. That's where my son ended up, was at Douglas. So now it would be basically just closing that building and moving those kids with a few other probably back to Smith Road again. So it's a flip-flop for a better building.
Well, that I can understand. It's just the total package yet I'm still having a problem with.
Right, and I'll happily, I know this thing probably as well as Paul does. I've studied a lot of the numbers and stuff, so I'm happy to talk to anyone, but specifically to your concern, because I was a Smith Road person too, and I get it. I've healed, but you can see it did come out a little bit.
In the renovations that you're planning on doing to Smith Road School, are you planning on taking the flat roofs off these buildings? Because I was a building contractor, and what does an architect have to go to school for to put a flat roof on any building?
You forgot in Michigan, especially. Great question.
All over the world, except for Saline, where they got factories up there to pay for the bills. Then they put gable roofs, solariums in the hallways. I mean, they're beautiful, and them people got nice schools up there, but they got industry up there to pay for them. Ford Motor Company coughs up a lot of money. That's why they got the beautiful high school up there. And,
I've not seen it, but I heard
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
people say that it's absolutely nice.
and then there's,
So I don't like flat roofs myself much either. I would love to do that, but it's not in the budget at this time. To take a flat roof off of a building and put a pitched roof on it is extremely complicated, it's extremely expensive, and it just would not be a good business decision.
all you have to do is drive up to Whiteford Township. They put a gable roof on a flat roof building up there about 10 years ago, and put a sheet metal roof on it. Cost them $600,000.
I
to do
can
the-
promise you it would be way more money than that to do that same thing here.
Well,
The way this building is laid out, maybe that one was laid out differently, but the way this building is laid out and constructed, it would be millions of dollars probably to do that.
And then another question I got, you're putting 37 million, or 37% of the budget into the high school, and that's just going to be refurbishing that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things included with the high school other than just the high school itself. So we're looking at doing a lot of work out at the stadium, new track, new field turf so that the field can be used not just for football but for a lot of other sports, new toilet rooms out there. There's about $1 million just in site work, just repaving parking lots and getting the traffic flow redone. The auditorium is a pretty big dollar figure. It's about $4.5 million to $5 million to put a new stage and a new lobby and reconfigure and refurbish the auditorium. So there's a lot of community things there. The new half obviously is fairly recent. It was built when this building was, but the old half is pretty much old existing mechanical equipment from when the building was built, old lighting. So we're looking at spending a lot of money on that half of the building. You also have the kitchen that services all the districts in the building. We're looking at putting a new kitchen on that facility. For those of you that walked through last week, that kitchen needs some major work. So there's some expensive things at the high school, which is always the case. High schools are expensive. I think Saline spent over $100 million or so on their high school. It was one of the most expensive ones in the country when they built it. Obviously, we're asking for a lot less
They've
money.
got 2 auditoriums, a swimming pool.
Yeah, with the movable floor and all that in the pool.
When you got an
I've been over
unlimited
there.
amount of money, you can do that, but...
Well, you can see we're not, I mean, we did talk at one time, I mentioned that we talked through 100 different scenarios. One of them was, why not build a new high school and, move the junior high kids to the high school and the elementary to, I mean, we talked about some things like that, but we didn't think it was a good business proposition to ask the community, do you want to spend $100 million and build another new high school?
No,
So we
that
tried to
high-
be prudent about that.
That high school was renovated somewhere around 15 years ago, I
Yep,
think
right
it
when this
was.
building was built.
But I didn't see much change in it. I can drive by there, and I could hardly tell the difference.
The old half probably looks the same as it always did. The new half is a lot nicer, I'll give you that.
I didn't see much change, but...
Very good. Question back here.
I have a question about the buses.
Just a second, we'll reach on Dave if that's okay.
Okay, you said there are 20 regular buses, 3 buses for children with special needs over a period of time. But, and this sort of goes too with the upkeep of the buildings, one of the first things that the public is threatened with when the state doesn't come through with the dollars is we're going to get rid of busing. Or you do away with, half of your janitorial staff. And I just worry about investing in things where we aren't going to have the money, not through any fault of ours, but because the state cuts back. So what considerations were taken into those things when you were doing these?
Great question. And when I said we would probably stagger the buses of like maybe 5 or 10 a year so that they don't come up on the end. But one of the things that was on the deficit elimination plan when I arrived was the very next thing was, the next thing to happen was eliminate secondary transportation, okay? In my previous district, when the state of Michigan did the $470 cut, we too were having meetings, we brought the public in. We just mentioned, some board member said the word, what could we save if we didn't bus students? Just by uttering those words at a Board of Education meeting, we lost students, I know. And it's interesting because parents, a lot of parents drive their kids to schools, so they don't use the bus. But as soon as you mention we're going to eliminate busing, it is a flight out of the district. And that poses a difficulty because schools are funded by the number of students that they have. We get 7,000, roughly, what is it, Sharon? Roughly $7,000. Yep, and that's general fund. It's exactly what you talked about, the dollars that we pay for custodial, for salary, for everything. That's how we run the school district. Of course, the bond dollars are totally separate. They can't be intermingled. But you bring up a good question. So I was happy to report that we are not eliminating secondary transportation. We're coming out of deficit early so we don't have to do that, because what I believe would have happened is we would have eliminated secondary transportation, students would have left the district, enrollment would have went down, we'd have had to lay off teachers, lay off employees that live right here in the community, and the whole thing just spirals down and down and down. And so I'm actually proud that we're not going to do that. Now, one of the things with the budget that I did, when I arrived here, Sharon and I spent 3 months, my first 3 months here, redoing the district budget. And I would certainly sit down with you and show you what we did. But essentially, when I arrived, the budget was about 62 pages. It was actually, when they started, before Sharon got here, there were 3,000 line items. She reduced them to 2,000 to consolidate. We took that budget, and the way it was budgeted wasn't wrong. Please don't, I'm not saying that. It was just different. We took that budget and reformatted the whole thing. Now, the reason we're coming out of deficit has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me being here. It has to do with the concessions that were taken, the closing of Temperance. I know that was difficult. And that I think what I lend to, what I bring to the thing is we reformatted that whole budget. And we've set it up so that even this building, if I had that budget in front of me and you asked me, how much do we spend in teacher salaries? I can pull it up in 2 seconds. Ron can pull it up, Lisa can pull it up, they've sat through, Sharon can pull it up. We've educated our board. So this new format, I believe, will help us better make decisions about the future. I mean, it is so specific. If you ask, you know, what are we spending in gas, I can hit a button, go to that page for buses, and tell you immediately. I can tell you everybody's salary, I can tell you the FICA, the retirement that we pay on the salary, I can tell you their health insurance, and how much money we spend. So the reason why I bring that up is you're exactly right. We are at the whim of Lansing, right? And you know that. They could come tomorrow and say, you know, $1,000 cut, and schools would have to adapt to that. But I believe that the tool that I bring to the table is a tool that will help the Board of Education, that will help this school district make good financial decisions down the road so we don't find ourselves in deficit. Unfortunately, I would like to promise that, but I can't, because Lansing could, like I said, tomorrow they could come in and say, nope, we're reducing your foundation allowance, and there you go. The good news is, and this will be on tape, this might be a good thing, it's an election year, right? So what happens during election years, and you're laughing, so you know exactly what's happening. We think, the board thinks, I think that Paul's, I'm sure, is talking to other school districts. We think we'll get a little bump this year because politicians promise things. It's election year, make everybody feel good. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're going to take that and run, because any increase is better than a decrease. We still haven't made up for the $470 cut that we had back in 2011. So, I wish I could answer that question. I can only tell you that we have reformatted the budget. I've educated the budget on this new, with the board on this new format. It's pretty easy, Ron. I think Ron could tell you that he can go right to the high school and see exactly what we spend on high school teachers, high school paras. I mean, it's that specific, and it's not rocket science. It's just, I'm not smart enough, so I have to have everything laid out. And really what it is it's an Excel spreadsheet just beefed up. And it has, you know, all of those line items, and it took Sharon and I for everything. Everything is linked. Took us forever to put it together, but we did, and I think that will help us make better decisions. So, but that's a great question. So hopefully I kind of got to where you're going.
I don't want us to build buildings and then have 40 kids in class.
Yep.
Because of
Yep. I understand it. Another good thing that I think that is interesting, though, and this is what happened in my previous district, we had to make cuts. We didn't have a choice. And we tried to cut as far away from the classroom as we could, right? So what gets cut first? Your custodial. We tried to do it by attrition. So when people retired, you know, because we just tried to battle through. We had some fund equity dollars, so we were able to do that. And then when people retired in the support areas, then we wouldn't replace them, which meant more work for other people. But what we try to do is focus on efficiencies. For example, like if you're at a hospital, I don't know why hospitals seem to have all the money in the world, but you're walking down and here comes someone on one of those driver things, you know, one of those
Scrubbers.
And really that improves efficiency of that worker. Well, in this bond project, we have dollars set aside for equipment, and that would be a good example of one. So instead of having our people work harder, they work smarter, and you train them with that. And so we try to think of that because it's unfortunately what happens. So that's why that's a great, I mean, I could talk a long time on that subject. That's a great question, a great point. So, question all the way back, and just a second. Bill has a question.
One is, what about the site for the new school? Is there room behind Jackman Road? Did you build it and then tear Jackman down, or?
Yep, that's the current plan. It's not finalized. We've talked about maybe Temperance Road as well. That's a little more complicated. There's a gas line that runs behind the property. It's a lot smaller, exactly. So behind Jackman is what we've got.
I don't know how much property is there. Second question. Why do we need $250,000 to buy new band instruments for the high school? Among other things.
Yeah, there is money in part of the survey. We found out that we have students that rent.
Sure, my grandkids did.
Yeah,
they all rented it. Nobody got broke over that.
We have some that don't, and we have some folks, some kids that are specialty instruments. So in all of the discussions, we wanted to make sure if we had an opportunity and those instruments last a number of years, that we provide. Ron's part of the band contingency. So
I could speak to that just a little bit. I was the band director at the high school for 25 years before I ran for the board. And I can tell you that those instruments are old. In fact, I just had the privilege of talking with Paul Stanifer and Len Salvo about 2 weeks ago when they came up for a concert that the current band director hosted. And they talked about having purchased a lot of the instruments that I was still using 2 years ago when the junior high opened in 1971. Because Paul and Len were talking about how Paul had ordered them, but then Paul went to the high school, and Len got to use all those new instruments at the junior high. It's not uncommon when you do a thing like this, because those are so expensive. So you have so many students that need French horns that cost $2,000 a piece, or tubas that cost $5,000 a piece, or bassoons anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000, depending on what you buy. So we haven't purchased those. In my entire time here, there was one time that we did take $100,000 and refurbish a lot of the instruments, okay, which made them look better. Some of those that they purchased in 1971, about 1991, we were able to refurbish them, make them look a lot better, put new pads on them in those cases. But over the entire time, other than that $100,000, we probably didn't buy 20 new instruments. So it's time. The average life of an instrument, I think a music seller, a retailer will tell you probably 15 years.
For a trumpet?
We don't buy trumpets. People donate trumpets, people donate clarinets. The school only buys big instruments, tenor saxophones, baritone saxophones, percussion equipment. There is one baritone saxophone, I don't know if you know what that is, it's the big one, stands about this tall, from 1934. I don't know where it came from, but we checked the serial number, and it was still in use a 3 years ago. You remember the silver one? Yeah, 1934. So that's why we can put something in that, and it can take care of that deficit that has been accruing over the last 25 years.
Good, very good. Thanks, Bill. And Bill and I talked on the phone for about an hour the other day. Had some great questions, and I appreciated him calling and discussing He was an engineer, so he has a different perspective on the world, but I told him today, I'm glad he's came, and I appreciate his comments. We have another question right here.
I might be able to help that lady out a little bit, ease her mind. When Smith Road closed, I questioned it with a board member. And I was told if the school has to be reopened, it could be reopened with a minimum amount of money being spent. Because the other 3 schools, they would have been totally renovated in order for the state to let them reopen.
Very good point. Once you close a building for such long, you got to bring it up to code to reopen it. Very good point. Thank you. Yep. Paul has to deal with those issues all the time, so.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Great questions tonight. I appreciate it, especially it being cold that you're out here this evening. We have one more tour, and I would invite everybody, especially the Smith Road questions, to come next a week from Tuesday. I'm sorry. We have a week off because of spring break. I thank you for your support, and I appreciate everybody's comments, and have a good evening. Thank you.